So let's talk about your brain, because your mind is perhaps the only controllable force in the entire universe. The only thing you can ever control in your life is your mind, and your mind is basically the driving force of your brain. So let's talk about our brain today, because you better watch this video, because I spent half an hour drawing this shitty brain because I'm not the best artist out there. So props to my illustration, because I will make this point very, very clear. And so our brain has remained unchanged, neuropsychologically speaking, for the past 20,000 years. So for the last 20,000 years, nothing has changed. Like neuropsychologically speaking, like our brain has been hardwired for two fundamental things. Literally the only two states of our mind, and that's basically what the fundamental of our brain is. So our brain is fundamentally purposed for two specific things, and you guys probably will guess it, is one, survival, and two, reproduction. Or in other words, the stress state and the rest state. And I want you guys to remember that for the past, and I'll repeat it again, for the past 20,000 years, neuropsychologically speaking, our brain hasn't changed. And so that is an absurd abstract to digest, because then you'll understand that how we lived 20,000 years ago was so radically different to how our lifestyle is basically shaped today. And so my point of this video is that you have to understand how your brain fundamentally works, so that you can understand that in today's world, we are literally destroying this chemical factory. We are damaging, we are neuropsychologically speaking, we're going against its driven purpose, and that is basically these two kind of stuff. Now let me explain specifically before you guys click off, because I won't even start. So when it comes to do these two state of minds, survival has essentially the focus where your brain is literally on constant alert. So I'm not going to dive down the neurochemical of it, because firstly I'm not so informed about it, but what's more important is that you have to understand that when your brain is in this mode, your brain will inject the right amount of chemicals that includes dopamine, serotonin, and endorphin, and these chemicals will make sure that your brain is literally alert. And so when you're alert, you are hypothetically speaking in stress mode. And so that's basically what happens. And so when you're alert, that is when you pay attention, focus. And so let's talk about focus, because if you guys listen to my previous YouTube video, then you'll understand that focus and attention has to become, or is, one of the most crucial elements when it comes to predicting your success. Now, if you want to become a millionaire, or a successful businessman, or a politician, or an absolute career of a student, or an absolute amazing student, the point is that in order for you to achieve it, you understand that focus is one of the elements, one of the most crucial elements. And so when you're focused, right, your brain is essentially in its survival instinct, like fundamentally speaking, right? So the problem is, in today's age, is that our brain is constantly, like no joke, 24/7 in stress mode. Like you have to imagine, like your brain is just constantly active and you can't shut off. And unfortunately, like due to the, high dopamine stimulating activities, like, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram, and I don't know, pornography and clubs and social life, like this is being constantly triggered. And so what is the problem? It's because logically speaking, like if you guys do sports, for example, you understand how important rest is in terms of like your body. And so translate that into your brain. And so when you use, I like to call it the brain juice. So when you use a lot of, let's say, brain juice to, I don't know, focus on an assignment or do your work, or, focus on a startup or do some business, you are using a lot of brain juice. So you have to imagine your brain is just like dreaded with that brain juice. And so why is rest important is because during rest, let's say during deep rest, all that brain juice, which has basically like drained your brain, with like all that stuff and all that chemicals that go into your brain, that just remains all there because you literally used it. So it just all just like, just imagine like brain poo, like you've done so much stuff and then you just left your like leftovers there. And so what happens is when you rest, specifically during deep rest, and this happens during REM sleep, which I will talk in just a moment now, but during deep sleep, essentially, your brain like detoxifies itself. So it removes like the wastes, that's the word for it, I was looking for it just now, the wastes of the brain juice. So when you use a lot of brain juice, it leaves a lot of waste. Just imagine like brain poo. Maybe I just call it brain poo. Brain poo. And so this brain poo, if you leave the brain poo in your brain too much or too long, your brain is like literally 24/7 in alert mode. Like it's literally constantly draining itself, and that's a huge problem because eventually you'll have, and you probably have experienced this yourself, you have something called a burnout, or like when you're just so mentally exhausted or you can't really function to a degree that your motor skills aren't even working anymore. So the point is, when there's a lot of brain poo and there's a lot of waste essentially because of the brain juice, you need to detoxify that, and the only way you can possibly do that is to enter deep rest. And so how do you enter deep rest? Well, that's very straightforward, is you need good sleep. And again, before you click off, because this sounds as cliche as fuck, good sleep is ironically the biggest crisis in, I would say, 21st century, because recently I just saw a statistic where around 30% of British people, I don't know why the statistic was British, are sleep deprived. Sleep deprived. But, and this has been the case for a long time, I always blamed the individual. I always thought, maybe the individual's at fault because you have a shitty sleep routine and I don't know, like you didn't do the right stuff like to make you sleepy before you go to bed. I always thought that the reason why you couldn't sleep is an individual. And even though that is, an individual responsibility. And even though that is true to some extent, the truth is, and this is based on a few literature that I've read previously, which I will probably cite it in just a moment now, is that there's a structural issue. So what is a structural issue? Well, a structural issue is that if a lot of people are if a lot of people are facing this problem, that means that it is a structural issue because it's a pattern, and so a lot of people are facing it, so they all have the same core problem. And what is the core problem? It's not really the individual. It is to some extent, but it's not the individual. So what is the structural issue? The structural issue is you have to understand what the engine of our economy is. And the current engine of our economy is attention economy. Attention economy. So within the book from Johann Hari, if I pronounce his name properly, Johann Hari, and the book is called Stolen Focus, he explains this entire system. So he explains how our social media programs, social media platforms and softwares, and how they're basically designed to fulfill this, because attention economy is essentially eyeballs, and eyeballs is like literally you and me scrolling on TikTok or Instagram. It's basically any person who's on the device. And so the attention economy feeds eyeballs. And so what that means is that social media platforms are designed to get as many eyeballs as possible. But what they don't do is they don't realize the neuropsychological damages it causes when you feed this. Like for so long, they've been hyper focusing on how to keep you as glued as possible on these social media platforms. And think about it logically, because it makes sense. That's how the algorithm works. If you guys are a content creator or YouTuber, then you understand that in order for your videos to like blow up or get viral, and you guys will probably, I hope so, see that within my videos, is YouTube will reward you with more views, essentially, the longer the people are on the platform. So like if your video is a reason for them to stay as long as possible on their social media platform, then YouTube will reward you with views. And that's the fundamental of algorithm. And that is translated into every possible algorithm, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. They're all fundamentally designed the same way. But let's not talk about this too much. Let's talk about on what's so important. So my point of this video is that I want you guys to get these two states of mind. Where is it? Reproduction, okay, and survival. Fundamentally speaking, I want your brain to be cleanly and as clean as possible to be designed for these two specific functions only. And so what that means is, and I've explained that in my previous video, I do not have much space now, is that in order for you to become successful, and I won't dive into it too much, you need to have the first layer of the transcendence hierarchy set up. And what is the first layer? Is biological imperatives. One second. First layer. Your biological imperatives. And biological imperatives is literally sleep, nutrition, and physique. But physique is very often a byproduct of these two, but that's perhaps another story. But in this video, or basically the purpose of this video, is to make sure that your sleep and nutrition is done well. And so, how do we get deep sleep? Oh, this is a big topic. How do we get deep sleep? Well, literally do the research on yourself, because on average, most people, and you'll probably find this generic, second time, generic answer is you need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Hours of sleep. That is essentially true. So, literally, and I'm not going to explain in this video, create a routine, create habits, and make sure you get 7 to 9 hours sleep. I'll make a separate video, I promise, on the specific practical routines and stuff not to do when it comes to getting hours of sleep. But for fuck's sake, make sure that you get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So next, nutrition. So what do I eat? And this is very, very interesting. I'll make another separate video for this. I love separate videos. I'll make another separate video for this. But I want you guys to understand that when it comes to eating, there's fundamentally two stuff when it comes to your meals. And I'm not talking about specific ice cream or carbohydrates or protein or all of that shit. There's two stuff when it comes to nutrition. There's ritual food and there's flow food. And so what is flow food and what is ritual food? Now, flow food is directly correlated to the flow state of mind. And this is a huge topic, and I'll make a longer video on that. But flow state of mind is essentially the maximum cognitive capacity you can reach when it comes to paying attention and focus. And so essentially, like, you guys have probably heard about this because other people call it motion, or you're in your zone, or you're in your mode, or whatever it's called. But the point is, and I'm sure that you guys have experienced that before, is like, you know, when you just submerge into your task and you do it for hours and hours and without end, you just, you know, keep going with the task and it just feels effortlessly. So that is flow mind. And so my point is that there are foods, specific foods, that are designed to enter that stage, like flow food. And so the difference is, and this is the crazy thing, is the ritual food is focused on rest, and the flow food is focused on survival, essentially. And so I'll make a separate video of what these specific foods are, but understand that there are two types of food. And if you, for example, have a routine set out, and I don't know, you do like work, or you focus on your startup or assignments in the afternoon, then you would want your flow food to obviously be before that. So typically towards the end of the day, if you want to have a calm evening, if you know, like towards the end you just want to relax and chill the rest of your day, that ritual food will be the food that you'll have towards the end of the day. And so you gotta specifically adjust that to your own routine and schedule. But fundamentally speaking, that is essentially the basic engines and the basic factors that will contribute to your biological imperatives, hence yielding hopefully one day to the second layer of the hierarchy. And please check out this video so that you understand. And eventually, once you have entered the second layer of your hierarchy, then you can start focusing on making money. And that's basically what we all want, don't we? So I hope with that video that you guys understand the fundamentals of the brain. I did derail myself off topic a little bit, but if you did enjoy this, subscribe so that I will continue posting these kind of videos. Thank you guys.